Welcome to A Better Conversation, a podcast put on by A Better Dallas, well, A Better Texas now, I guess.
Yep.
You caught me. As always, I'm your host, Chris Klement, joined by the man, the myth, the legend, and the mustache, Kyle Mason.
Yes, I'm back in town. I did not tell anyone I left, but I did go out to the West Coast and have a really good time. Had to shave the beard.
So they made him shave his. You shaved your beard for America.
Yes, I did. And it's nice to kind of like switch it up every once in a while. And I think that's appropriate because we are about to switch up our game plan and talk about what we're doing in Tarrant County, aren't we?
We are. We're joined tonight by our special guest, Mr. Tim Davis, the chairman of the Tarrant County GOP. He is going to be here, not share the secrets, but kind of give us the direction for where Tarrant County is going to go. A lot of you very interested in where Tarrant County's got to go. So we're literally getting it like from the man himself that's going to make it happen. So Tim, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, guys. This is great.
I mean, can I call you Tim? Do I have to call you Chairman Davis? Is it your honor?
Nobody calls me that. Yeah,
okay.
Nobody calls. Somebody sent the first piece of mail I got that said honorable on it. I thought that's somebody else.
Well, would you mind giving our audience a little bit, about your background, what you do for a living, how you kind of came into politics?
Sure. Yeah, I'm an attorney, which you recognize and are familiar with.
Kyle, you're outnumbered tonight.
Yeah. So I'll invoice you later for all this. I'm an attorney, practice in Fort Worth. I also do some oil and gas investing, have a company that does that. Right now, it's a toss-up as to which one I enjoy more because it's a fun time to be an oil and gas investor for sure, but it's always a great time to be an attorney. Politically, I just kind of got involved by just working on some friends' campaigns. I had a friend that ran for judge. And it was the cycle that Beto O'Rourke ran against Ted Cruz for Senate.
2018.
That's right. And so I was, we work late hours sometimes. And so I was going home at night in the run up to the election, and there was a woman in my neighborhood that had a Beto sign in her yard. And so the frustration of working so late and then getting home and my headlights would hit that sign every night. Just hit it every night. And I would get madder and madder. And I finally just called my friends. I said, I got to do something. Tell me how to get involved. And so I got involved in their campaigns. And from there, I was general counsel of the Tarrant County Party for a while. And then we had a baby right in the middle of COVID. I say we, my wife, she did all the work.
I'm assuming it wasn't the Tarrant GOP.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. Yeah, that's right. And so our son was born. And so I just kind of stepped back for a few years thereafter. And then my predecessor announced that he was going to run for statewide office, and I was excited to get back re-engaged, and so here I am.
By the grace of God, here you are.
Right.
So what is, I guess, in general for you, you talked a little bit about working that race, but stepping into more and more of the political world, kind of being that person in 2018 that got engaged, what has that path been like to get to chair now? Yeah,
so, I think the first thing for me is just, and this isn't a saying, it's going to sound like it is, but I think all three of us would say this. This is a special place where we live. And I know we're in Dallas right now, but please forgive me. I think Tarrant is even a little more special. I'm a little partial to Tarrant County. And I just realized that this was a special place, having lived in other parts of the country, having practiced law in other parts of the country. Texas is very special, and it's worth keeping. And so, when I talk about my headlights hitting that sign, the anger that provoked was a lot of just kind of concern and fear in some ways that would change, and it wouldn't be the place that I was so proud to live in. And so that motivated me, I guess, to what you're asking about. That motivated me to get involved in those campaigns and make sure that our party was prevailing, our party was winning, and that was a close one with Cruz and Beto.
Mm-hmm.
You all probably remember the margin better than me, like less than 2 points.
It was less than 2
points. Is that right? And so that was a real shocker for that to kind of be my first foray into all this, to think there's a real chance here, that this could go in a way that I don't like. And so that kind of, anytime that I think fear is a good motivator in a lot of ways, in terms of just personal action of getting involved and making sure that with this special place that we have, we get to keep.
Well, so it made Dallas a lot less special, that election, especially if you're a lawyer and do appellate work, because that's the election that we lost every single Court of Appeals seat that was on the ballot. That was the last election where you had straight ticket voting. Mm-hmm. And I still remember I was with a client at a Mavs game when I saw the early votes come in Dallas County, and like all the straight ticket votes that came in. I was like, we just lost the Fifth Court of Appeals. Like, there's no way we're holding on to the court after that. So very real for us here. One of the things, we started as a Better Dallas, now we're a Better Texas. one of our foundational principles is trying to get people more involved, right? We had a lot of people that were frustrated after the 2020 COVID, like all the shenanigans that were happening there, all the corruption that was happening there. They wanted to do something, but they didn't know how. So as an organization, we formed to try to plug people in, take that energy, take your talents, and go do something with that. And within the new Tarrant GOP, as you're now the chairman, what with somebody that's in Tarrant County that feels frustration after what's going on right now, where would you direct them?
Yeah, there's a ton of campaigns. We'll have, probably 45-ish spots on our ballot, depending on what part of the county that you live in. I always think it's, obviously I think the natural thing for a chair to say is come be a precinct chair. And of course that's available. We have, probably 318-ish, I think as of last count, precinct chairs. If your precinct is empty, come be a precinct chair. But I think before you do that, go work on a campaign. Go find a candidate that you really support, that is speaking to your values, and figure out whatever you can do for them. And that is so much more available, I think, than people realize. Campaigns love that when that happens. I was with a group of volunteers on Saturday who were about to go out and door knock for what they were calling this day of action that they had organized, these campaigns. And it was great because there were a ton of people there, and I've been around our party for a long time now. There were a ton of people there that I didn't recognize, that didn't know yet. And so that's what those folks were doing. And I think that, to me, is such a high touch, high contact way of getting involved just right out of the gate. Because from there, you'll be like me, and it will lead into all manner of things and lead you to things that you never thought you'd be able to get to do.
Right, like you talked about, you're an attorney serving as a GC for the county party.
Right.
There's all sorts of specialties. I mean, running a county party is running a business.
That's right.
It's really anything you would do as a business, you're going to be doing as a county party. So there's lots of opportunities to use your particular skill set to help, even if it's like data entry, right? I mean, that's always a need.
Yep, that's
something
right.
along those lines. Well, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how you became the chair in Collin County. So for those of you that don't know,
Man, I just took on an extra county.
Tarrant
Gosh,
County. Sorry,
I'm worried for a second.
Yeah. Well, you talk about being in Dallas. I live in Collin County now, so Tarrant County. We're not, Byron. We're not trying to replace you. We're not doing anything like that. But when, generally speaking, for our audience's sake, the county party chair is elected in the party's primary.
Right.
So we have upcoming primaries, as you all know. Early voting starts next Tuesday. If you have a contested race for your party chair, that election is going to happen with a regular primary.
That's right.
You stepped in sort of in the middle of a term. So would you mind telling us a little bit about how that happened?
Yeah, so the election code kind of provides the same manner for whenever there's a vacancy that exists, if there's a death in the nomination process, things like that. And so when there's a vacancy in the county chair, the precinct chairs come together as the executive committee and they fill it for the remainder of that term. And so that's what happened for me. It was an election by the precinct chairs. And in Tarrant, it's kind of interesting. Our last 3 chairs have been selected that way. Now I'm on the March ballot here in a few days. I'm unopposed, which has also been true, for the last 2 chairs in the way that they were selected. And so but it's an election like any other, and in fact, in some ways it's harder because you're talking about the 300 most engaged, most knowledgeable, most motivated people to pick that role. We're proud of that structure in Texas, that those folks are the ones who fill these vacancies like this. In Tarrant a few years ago, we filled a judge position this way. The executive committee came together and those precinct chairs filled a judicial spot on our ballot that way. And so I think that's a good process. I think that's a good thing. So that's the way that I was selected. My predecessor stepped out in kind of an interesting timing for all of that. And then the secretary of the party, who is the only other person who's kind of elected at large in a county party, calls a meeting under the election code. And there's one thing on the agenda, and it's to fill the chair spot.
What's the difference? Like, is there like a campaign that goes on for that sort of thing? I mean, what's that process like?
Yeah, so I set out, just in practical terms, I'll tell you what I did. The election code requires that every county party maintain a list of its precinct chairs. And I just started in the A's and started making phone calls. And I was fortunate that through my time in the party, I built relationships with a lot of those folks. I had really good relationships with them. And then where I could talk them into calling other people so I didn't have to, I was more than happy to do that. And I think it's like any other election at that point. You engage your stakeholders. You try to find folks to support you and endorse you that way. And then you start laying out what your plan is and what you think that you can do and contrasting that with other people who may be looking for it. What's great about our party is the contrasts are kind of, though they probably seem deep at the time in Tarrant County, at least, the folks that were looking at that role, by and large, have a pretty common agenda, a pretty standard agenda. It was just going to be, what's the way to execute it and what's the way to get us across the line.
What made you want to step into that? Because, obviously, to your point, if I remember right, you were elected, November?
That's right. Yeah,
so November is the middle of filing period.
Yeah.
Right. You've got people running for office. So as the chair, you're responsible for accepting those applications. Y'all also were dealing with the race in SD9, which we'll talk about later. But you're also just in the middle of an election cycle as well.
Yeah.
So, I don't want to call you crazy, but why in the world, with all of that, would you decide you want to step into that fray?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great question. And I think it's because of that timeline that I wanted to do it. We can't, Republicans need to lead with competence, and we need to show examples of competence. And part of what had me concerned just about the timing of the vacancy was how important what we were doing really is. The county party puts on a primary, and a lot of folks don't realize that. They show up and they get in a booth and they push the buttons, and it feels like any other election. When in actuality, that's the party's election. And we have a process that we go through that you've talked about with the filing period, that we put candidates on the ballot, make sure all of that is legitimate, and then put them forward to people to vote in our primary to select our candidates. And so that's a really important thing. That's the main role in a lot of ways of the county party. And so with the vacancy occurring for me, it felt all the more urgent and all the more important. Now, I knew that it was going to be a lot of work, and it was worse than I thought it was going to be, just in terms of workload and of getting ready for everything. But it just, to me, was so critical. I know a lot of these candidates and office holders, and it was important to me that we got it right.
Well, I'd like to hear, we actually talked about this when it happened on the podcast. It's my understanding there were 3 other people that were running for that position, at least, within the county party.
Yep.
Y'all went through one round of voting, and the other 3 candidates basically recognized that you were likely to become the chair ultimately. And so instead of dragging the process out, just, I think graciously, properly just stepped down and said, hey, let's just, Tim's going to be our guy.
Yeah, yeah.
How did you do that? I'm just saying, what we hear about constantly within Republican politics, and I think is something that happens in Texas, is the primary is the whole fight because the seats are safe and what have you. How were you able to bridge that gap to where that sort of what could have been very nasty divide the party type of infighting actually kind of turned into some coalition solidarity?
Yeah, no, that's great, and I think you're telling it well. I don't know is probably the best answer. As I mentioned, when I started calling through the list of precinct chairs, I'm really fortunate to have a wide range of relationships with people on all manners of the spectrum in our party. I think the other thing that's interesting is county parties, you only hear about them when it goes nuts. When something goes crazy and, there's a resolution on resolutions, or, we're going to form a committee on committees, or whatever it happens to be. By and large, county parties, because they're made up of precinct chairs, and because those precinct chairs are so motivated and energetic and involved in the process, that's who you want deciding this stuff, kind of like what we talked about. And they get it. They see how important that unity is, and they see how important coming together at important times, like what we were in November and still are, really is. And I have nothing but compliments for the folks that I was running with, because they were the same. They were like-minded. A couple of them are precinct chairs. One of them's been involved in one of the women's clubs, and they realized the urgency of the moment that we were in. And all of us have to put aside what we may personally want for the good of what we're trying to get to.
I think, maybe it's a tell of the way you look at things, but the fact that you talked about the folks you were running with, right, not the folks that you were running against, right? Like not having it be this combative situation, I think is great. I like to look at the primary process as it doesn't have to be good versus bad.
Right.
Not
always.
It doesn't have to be, right? It can be good and great, right? You can during a primary, you can be choosing between 2 good options.
Oh, absolutely. And I think
figuring out which one is best.
Yeah, most of the time we are.
Right.
I'm just being silly because every now and then somebody sneaks on our ballot and we're like, where did this one come from?
Yes. We've definitely seen some of those.
Yeah.
So I kind of, with that in mind, if you wouldn't mind, we talked about SD9 and the race in SD9, special election, everything along those lines. Before we get into that, you had mentioned that there's a difference between a special election and a general election, things along those lines. For those that may not know, would you mind explaining that?
Yeah, sure. And this is one of the things about the election code that I think we should get rid of. In Texas, we tend to have uniform election dates, and I think that's even how the code refers to them. So that's what we're used to seeing. We're used to a March primary. We're used to municipal elections in May. I guess most places in Collin and Dallas do that. Most places in Tarrant do that. Although, just a side note, we're starting to see a lot of municipalities move to November,
Right.
which I think is a good idea. I think
Yeah.
we should encourage people to do that, not only for the cost savings, but it just, when people are thinking about voting, that's when we're going to get them.
Right.
And I think that's just so important for folks to think about. So, and the other thing for guys like us is I like a break in the cycle. Years like this are brutal,
Yeah.
where we have the March primary, go into May, municipals, we can take maybe a few days off in the summer, but then we're headed towards the November general election that everybody is familiar with.
Sometimes it's too hot to block walk.
It is, yeah.
It's a constant treadmill. I mean, and everyone does this pretty much volunteer, and that's where you burn out all your volunteers.
Right.
So everyone's like, "There's no volunteers." Like, yeah, because they're still licking their wounds
Right.
and trying to hang out with their family
Right.
from the last election.
Yeah, I mean that's why Decembers of election years I tend to like, because that's the time you can get your break finally. So I think municipal as many as can should move to November. I just think that's better. And then the November general election, those are our uniform dates. However, when vacancies occur, the governor is empowered to call these special elections, and it's completely within his power. As we saw in Houston, they had a congressional seat that was on the same date as our election in Tarrant County. That seat had been open, I think, almost for a year in filling Sylvester Turner's congressional seat down there. So it truly is within the governor's power to call them. He calls the period of early voting, then he calls the day of the election. And that's what happened here. Senator Hancock resigned that seat to be appointed, I think his term is acting comptroller. And then he's now on the ballot to run for that in the Republican nomination. That created the vacancy, and then the governor chose to call the election in the manner that he did.
There's another key difference that I think is worth talking about in that it's called an open or a jungle election.
Yeah,
right.
that's
So
right.
usually we have our primary process that we go through where candidates of the parties, you narrow it down to one for each party, and then you go to the general election. Special election,
Right.
especially what we saw here, is you can have multiple candidates in the same party running at the same time against candidates for the other party.
That's right.
So here, there were two Republican candidates
That's right.
kind of splitting the vote in the first round, and the one Democrat.
That's right.
Then we ultimately saw in the runoff, didn't have the same Republican turnout. If the same amount of Republicans would have come out and solidified around one candidate, there would have been enough, right?
Right.
What role do you think, especially in SD9, we'll get into it a little bit more, but just that specifically, this sort of open primary, jungle primary, like how does that affect these special elections?
Yeah, it's a mess. And like we've seen that even in other times when Ron Wright passed away and there was an election to replace him, same situation. I mean, in that case, I think there were, that election, I mean, maybe 10 different candidates.
Wow.
And in Texas, we have a 50% plus one rule, which I think is good. I mean, you want, the collective whole of us to elect somebody. You don't want somebody elected with 6% of the vote. But that always forces a runoff, especially in races where there's multiple candidates, which, can be debated. I think it's good that we require the majority. But again, that's where we should move back to regular dates where people are used to voting. That would be the benefit of that. Because we'll have, I left out an election, we'll have a runoff election between March and May, where, in some of our races, especially judicial races, where we'll have a lot, we'll put them to a runoff.
Quick question on the special election and the governor calling what was the significance of filling this vacancy, considering that, okay, this guy won, he won't be voting on anything.
Yeah.
Why push it?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great question because it could have been on the March ballot just the same. And that's happened in other instances. I don't know. It was something before I was chair. Although hopefully I'll meet with the governor soon and I'll ask him why did we feel the need to do this in the timeline that we did. Not that I'm critical of it. I don't want to have that's my Senate seat, so I don't want to have a
vacancy for a year or whatever. Yeah,
right. But I think again, like this idea of these special elections, especially because we know that's how they proceed in the way that you talked about this jungle system where we're just all going to throw in and see what happens. Because it could have been two Republicans running against each other in the runoff, and so I just think it's a tough system when the dynamics work out the way that they have.
Yeah, I mean, So speaking of that, we participated or we sponsored an AG debate in Collin County, actually Collin County, and Representative Luther was there. Her first election was a special election, right?
That's
She ran for an open Senate seat,
Yes.
and you ended up having 2 Republicans make it into the runoff, and then she didn't prevail there. So it's just like, that I think a lot of times happens where you end up with 2 Republicans in the second round in the runoff, and so I kind of feel, at least in my experience, the more moderate Republican has an advantage in that situation, right? Because Democrat voters may show up and choose them as the lesser of 2 evils.
Where's the appeal? Right. And they're tougher. The thing I don't like in terms of just running an election, they're a little bit tougher to figure out where the vote is coming from, to your point. If you look back at what happened in SD9 in November, the aggregate Republican votes outnumbered the Democrat vote. So if they're, theoretically, if that had held, just, generic Dem, generic R, we would have won that back in November. But it's just, jungle is the best way to describe it. You just never know what's going to come out of it.
And when you have that type of situation in the special elections, when you have the runoff, can anybody vote in the runoff, or do you have to have had voted in the special election?
Anybody can vote in the runoff.
Right. So that's where the second time around, it's even more wheels off, because it's not even, like in a primary situation where you had to have at least voted in, like you can't vote in the other party's primary, show up for the runoff.
Right.
Normally speaking. Well, I'd like to talk a little bit more specifically about sort of what it was like for you kind of being thrust in the middle, because the first round in SD9 already occurred when you were elected chair, right?
It had. That's right. That's right.
So what was it like for you stepping in as a brand new acting chair?
Yeah.
And you have what really is a nationally covered election going on where quite literally you live.
Yeah. So, as you mentioned, I come in right in the middle of November. So the filing period had been happening for a couple weeks already. We had a couple weeks of it left. So literally right in the middle of the filing period. So that to me, in terms of just how do I triage these things, finishing the filing period was the most important. Making sure that everybody did their paperwork correctly, which sounds so lame and so stupid, but is so important because we can challenge each other's paperwork through the process, what you and I talked about before we got started.
Well, and as chair, it's your responsibility to review that.
That's right. It comes to the chair.
We see that all the time. Big names, too, are like, hey, you can't be in this election anymore. And it's just an embarrassment to everybody.
Well, we had a situation in Dallas County a few years back where the chair had accepted an application for a candidate that did not live in the district where he was trying to run. And the Democrats tried to file criminal, they asked the DA and the police department to file criminal charges over it. It's not a game. It's serious.
Yeah, that's right. So, it was just important to me that we do that process well, and we owe that to our candidates. If somebody wants to raise their hand and say they're going to run for office and seek our nomination, I think our infrastructure owes that to them to make sure that we're doing that process properly. And so we get through all of that. Then we head towards ballot draw, which is I don't know if you've ever attended one of those. It's kind of fun. It's kind of one of those old school politics things that is just purely up to chance, but it's a fun event. People come, they send their surrogates, and that every county, I didn't know this until I started getting involved with the county chair and the county party. Governor Abbott, I think he's maybe third or fourth on our ballot. He may be a different spot in Collin, maybe a different spot in Dallas. Each county determines its order of the candidates on the ballot. So that's that process. And then we certify that both to the state and then to the local elections administration to make sure that what we say where Greg Abbott is supposed to go is where he goes. And so then when that was done, I thought that was about maybe mid-December. I thought, okay, I can have a Christmas now. I can take a break and we can be done. The problem with it was what you've already said. We know January 31st is coming. And so it was important to me to make sure in Tarrant, the way we're organized, obviously we have the precinct chairs. We have area leaders for each House district. It's about 10. And they would say this about themselves. They're the middle management. And so they help and resource the precinct chairs within their area. They kind of serve as a conduit between me and the precinct chairs for what they need. And then as a conduit for the candidates in their area as well. And so we really got motivated with the area leaders because SD9, I think, and I used to have this map committed to memory. I think it touches parts of every House district in Tarrant County.
Oh, wow.
I mean, it's Tarrant County's Senate district for sure. And it's totally contained within Tarrant County. And so we really got motivated in the time before Christmas to make sure that her campaign was working with them, they were working with the campaign, and that there was a lot of overlap there. And so a lot of her door knockers were our precinct chairs, organized by the area leaders, and a lot of her events were hosted by the area leaders and precinct chairs in all those different respective parts of the county. And so that was kind of the first thing that we started doing with SD9. Then we have the holidays, where at least in our party, we take off. We were with our family. This isn't our religion. This is something we do. And so we really didn't come back in earnest on, at least I don't think anybody that I knew really focused on politics until after the new year. And then it's a real sprint to the 31st, where we had an EC meeting that was important, where we really featured Lee and what she was doing in her race, because that was the only race on that ballot. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like there was that and a few other municipal things or some ballot propositions. That was it. And so there was a lot of focus on it, both nationally, but especially locally. It was important to us. And so just coordinating with the various stakeholders. That's the other thing that I've kind of come to see is the county chair in some ways just serves as a quarterback or a conduit for all of these different groups, not just the precinct chairs, but anybody who identifies with our party, whether it be a club or a business. I have business people that call a lot and ask how they can get involved. Churches, especially now, how they can get involved. And so that was just a large part of what I was doing in the first part of January, was just making sure that everybody was connecting with who they needed to connect with.
So you talked a little bit about the primary role of the county party is running the primary, right? I mean, I think it's an under misunderstood part about what the county party does. When it comes to elections, when you are the county party, are you focused on getting the base out? Are you focused on attracting new voters? I mean, I know that you can walk and chew gum at the same time, but there does have to be, you use words of triage. There's a set of priorities.
Yeah.
What's the focus of the county party when you're looking to get out the vote? Yeah.
So, I mean, I guess it depends on which of the elections we're talking about. So I got that question from one of our precinct chairs about what kind of poll greeting are we going to do, the party, going to do in the primary? And the answer is none. I mean, if you show up and you decide to come and vote in our primary, at that point, we've got you. You're doing what we want you to do.
Right.
And so thank you. We're glad that you're here. But their poll greeting doesn't really help us in the primary. Now, individual candidates certainly would do that. Now, when we shift to November, we're the main poll greeters, because you'll have a voter come up who may still be on the fence about, I don't know about this candidate or that candidate. We'll have an important Senate race, regardless of who either party nominates. We'll have a very important Senate race in November. We want to be the party that is greeting those folks, especially at our large locations, and making sure that they understand about our candidates and the contrast with the other side. So I think that is a big thing that you'll see us do in November, but we won't do it at all in March.
Right. What about for like the special election? I mean, is the focus, and I mean, I don't need, like I said, secrets, but
sure.
Is the focus from the county party, from your perspective, more of we got to get our people out? I'm just going to say the way I generally look at it is, I expect the county parties to be trying to get the base out to vote.
Yeah.
And then it's the candidate's job to grow the show,
yeah.
bring in new people, get people excited, and bring independents over, what have you. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think you said it right. I think our job is to get the base out and to make sure that we're doing everything we can to make sure people understand there is an election, which is harder than it sounds, harder than it seems, but also who to vote for. And, January 31st was easy because, again, one race on the ballot, two people. We sent, I'll have to go back and look at these numbers. I want to say 100,000 emails by the time all was said and done. We sent as many text messages when all was said and done. We coordinated, I think, 45,000 doors. And I think in a lot of ways, that's our role. Now, we got to get smarter about that, about how we get out the vote, because I think I meant to count today just because I knew we would talk about it. Today, I think I got, for the March primary, about 7 different text messages from different candidates.
Oh, my gosh.
And they've been sending all year already.
Yeah.
And so, we, in terms of messaging and getting out, had to say, no, there's an election the 31st. The thing I'm texting you about right now is this Saturday. It's not in March. It's this Saturday. And I think, we're not really doing a postmortem, but I think that's just in terms of, that was a challenge for us in making sure that we had broken through and trying to break through what's in March and what is in January at the very end.
That's a good point. I don't think I've heard anyone really bring that up. There is a ton of noise right now. Today, I've probably received 7 or 8 text messages about the primaries. Everyone knows the primaries in March. So yeah,
Yeah.
That is good. A lot of people probably saw those signs all over town and just thought, okay, yeah, that's in a couple months.
Yeah.
I'm on the other side of that. My spam filter is now attuned enough that I don't get those texts. I get other people saying like, "Oh, did you see this text?" I'm like, "Nope." And I checked my spam. I was like, "There it is."
Oh wow.
Nice.
Well, because
Except for the ones for me, right? You're letting those through.
Oh, yours are
good.
yours are
Good.
flagged favorite for sure. Because that's one of the things is a pack that we first did, get out the vote, and so we were very aggressive on sending out text messages to get voters to come out. And then when we first started doing this back in 2022, it was really effective, right? There wasn't a whole lot. There weren't a whole lot of people doing that or using text that way. But now, this last election cycle, we decided not to do it because there is just so much saturation.
Yeah.
You get so many texts that it just becomes noise. And I don't know how effective it is anymore.
Yeah.
Because I think people are seeing as like, oh, another political text, swipe, whatever.
Easily swipe. Yeah.
I don't know which iPhone swipe it is, but swipe left to delete for me on an Android. Well, we don't want to do a postmortem, but I am interested. So,
But we should.
You've got, so I'm a big candidate quality for me comes down to qualifications first.
Sure.
I want somebody that's qualified for the position, and living through COVID is the absolute reason that I will always think about that for the rest of my life. There were people that were making decisions that had no right to make decisions because they were entirely unqualified for the roles of which they were in.
Absolutely.
So that made it for me for the rest of my life. That's going to be important. I love hearing from your perspective that you used to be the GC for the county party, because it means you understand compliance, you understand, that you got to follow the rules, and there are a lot of rules to follow.
Yep.
I love the fact that you talked about in the fact that you worked campaigns before. So you understand the boots on the ground, what it is to be a volunteer, organizing volunteers. I think those are wonderful qualifications for being chair. Now, as a chair, you've gone through an election, and, it's certainly not the result that you would have wanted. But I would kind of think that maybe that's a blessing in the sense that you learned, I'm sure, a lot of lessons.
Yeah.
And you get to use those in November instead of having November be your first time around the block. What out of the SD9 race did you learn that you're going to be able to carry forward?
Yeah, I mean, I think when I've talked with anybody that's asked that question, what happened on the 31st is not good. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and try to paint it as something that we're just thrilled with. There were some good things that we learned from it, though. Like with any loss, there's things that you learn from. The first one is in Tarrant County, we might have gotten just a little bit soft, and we might have gotten just a little bit too used to taking for granted the fact that we say about ourselves that we're the largest red county in the country. I think we are still.
Colin disagrees.
Yeah.
I will say this, like, other people might say that, but people from Tarrant County say it first.
Yeah.
We don't have the opportunity to say that. So it's like, oh my gosh, dude, we get it.
So, I mean, and all due respect. And so I hear it.
Nobody in Dallas County says that.
Yeah. Well, somebody said the other day, what about Houston? I was like, absolutely not. No. Like nobody is saying that. And so in Tarrant, maybe that's what happened, that we got too used to just, the last time this spot was on the ballot, the Republican won by 20 points. And just that idea of that's what will always happen. That's the way it's always been. That's the way it's always going to be.
It just got drawn as a safer seat.
Right. Right. Yeah. And the president won it by 17. It's fine. It's not fine. We can't say that stuff anymore. We can't take anything for granted. And we shouldn't have been in the first place. We should take no vote for granted. We should take no voter for granted. We should take no election for granted, because everything, I don't care if it was, even if we had done a 20-point margin a few Saturdays ago, shame on us if we had taken that for granted. And so it's good for us, at least, it was good for me at least, to have that remembrance that we earn every vote. And we win every election by earning every vote. And we will do that with the strength of our ideas.
Yeah, I will say I remember in November when the Democrat came out ahead, right? You had the most votes in November. I had a lot of friends in Tarrant County, not all, but I had a lot of friends in Tarrant County that was like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, right.
There were more Republican votes. We shouldn't have split the vote. We did. It'll be fine.
Yeah.
We'll take care of it in January. And to your point, I do think there was some complacency in that. Another thing that I see from the outside in, we have it in Dallas, it happens in Colin, it's happening all over the state. Texas is a safe red state, full of safe red seats. And the legislature drew a safe map for us. And so too often I see Republicans think only about March and just assume that November is a given. Oh, whoever has the R next to their name will win in November. So what matters is this like really bitter infighting for March. What can you do as the county party chair? It's undeniably happening in Tarrant County like it is everywhere else. What can you do as the county party chair to sort of form a winning coalition with that in the background?
Yeah, I mean, March is, I both love our primary and hate our primary. You know, it's like it's a big food fight at the dinner table in our party. We will come out of that, though, with candidates. And so I don't think the party chair should really involve himself in that process too much. I want our voters to decide that. I want our candidates to rise to the top of that. And then whoever our voters decide, I want to do everything in my power to get elected in November. So I know that we have this election coming up. I think it's a week from today. We'll start early voting, I think. Edit that out if I'm wrong. But
We will.
but we'll vote very soon. And then the primary is the first Tuesday in March. Even though it's the election that I'm supposed to run, and we will do that, I'm thinking about November. That's what matters to me. We'll have nominees here in a few weeks. We'll know who they are, and we'll, regardless of who they are, we will press ahead towards November. I think what you're talking about, though, is an important discussion, because what happens beneath the surface in a lot of these parties is that kind of squabble that you've talked about of who's going to be more MAGA, who's going to be more country club, who's going to be more whatever, and just that battle that we have internally in our party. What we have to stop, and that's a fine battle. That's great. And I've got friends and candidates that are on all sides and all parts of that spectrum. That's fine. But the way that we resolve that is by what happens in March. And then it's resolved and it's done. And let it be done. Because the other side is very good at that. Like, they're very good at being done whenever they're done. And we have got, in Tarrant County, we've got to get to that spot in this election year. And I guess this is the second thing that I would say that I just see coming out of the special election is we have, and credit to the other side, but they get their nominees and they get full behind them and push them towards November. We are still trying to relitigate the primary in the summer. And in November, we're still trying to relitigate the primary. And that does not serve us at all. We have nominees, and everybody has this saying too, that the worst Republican is still better than the best Democrat. We got to believe that, and we got to get behind those candidates, because if we don't, then we'll suffer the fate that we saw a few Saturdays ago.
No, I think one of the most terrifying and impressive things I've ever seen in my life was how quickly the Democrats rallied around Joe Biden in 2020.
Yes.
Right? Like, Bernie Sanders was going to win, right? He was going to win that primary until Obama gets involved in the back rooms, and all of a sudden people start dropping by the wayside and clearing the road for Joe.
Yeah.
And
then we saw him do, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but it's just such a good example. We saw him do it for the next 4 years. We watched him decompose right in front of us, and they were all like, oh, he's sharper than he's ever been.
They still say that. They still say that.
Sharper than a tack.
Yeah. I mean, Kamala was recently interviewed, and she's like, no, he was good. Yeah, he was absolutely good the whole time.
And then we saw them do it with her, too.
Right.
They didn't have a primary.
No.
They had a coronation.
No, and they still did it. They lost that one. They didn't do as good rallying the troops that time. But that's the sort of thing that, for the Democrats, at least in Texas, that sometimes is the benefit of being, the stranger on the island, right? Like, anybody that's on your team, you're grateful for, as opposed to like when you run the island, which is kind of how a lot of Republicans look at Texas. It's really tempting not to look at things that way.
Yeah.
So, setting that aside, what is the path forward looking like in Tarrant County? Like, what is it that you're wanting to do? Like, what are your priorities as chair as you build and get ready for November?
Yeah. So, again, I won't give away too many secrets, but that assumes there are secrets to be had.
The biggest secret is whether they're secrets.
Yeah,
right?
That's right.
We're definitely not going to have our people vote often. They'll only be voting once.
That's right. You get one. You get one. No, I think it's kind of an extension of what I've said, that we can't take any election, any vote, any voter for granted anymore. That means that we're going to be a battleground county. But we just have to run an election as if we're a battleground county. And, we used to talk about battleground states in Ohio and Florida and all these places now. That's the mindset that we're going to have is we can lose this. And let's be real with ourselves, kind of to what we've been talking about, that this is a thing that could be lost if we don't do it exactly right. And we're going to have to require that perfection in message discipline. We're going to have to require that perfection in fundraising. We're going to have to require that perfection in the events that we hold, in the way that we interact, not just corporately, but with everybody, our neighbors, the people we go to church with, the people we work with. At my firm, I get all these questions all the time, especially after a few Saturdays ago. What are we going to do? And I got to be disciplined talking to my law partners just the same as I would be disciplined talking to WFAA. And I expect that of our candidates. I expect that of our party leadership, because we can lose it. And if we're not perfect, it's going to slip through our fingers.
I love that as an idea. How do you promote that amongst candidates where really attention is the name of the game? Especially, again, there are a lot of seats in Tarrant County, taking nothing for granted, that are safe seats. There are plenty of candidates and electeds in Tarrant County and across the state that have higher ambitions. And so they want that attention for themselves. They want that soundbite. It's just sort of baked into the cake. So as the county party chair, what can you do to try to promote that sort of message, discipline, and getting everybody on the same page?
Well, I got to do it myself. That's the first thing. I can't expect from other people to do something that I'm not willing to do myself. But I also, if you want to go and pop off wild on X or on Twitter or whatever, you can do that January 1st of 2027. But from now until November, at least, you can even do it in December. But from now until November, I want to talk to voters, and I want our candidates to talk to voters, and I want our leaders and our stakeholders to talk to voters. And I think about this a lot. I use the example of my wife, she's raising our two boys, and she is focused on doing that. She does that excellently. But she's not in the level that we are. And I interact with people like her all the time. People that I work with, people I go to church with, people that I just see out socially. And they're watching us. They know your all's role. They know you have this podcast. They know that you're involved in Collin and in Dallas. And they're watching you for that. About what are they talking about? I have my favorite candidates and my unfavorite candidates, but no one would ever hear me talk about it in a setting that would be detrimental to someone who got our nomination. And shame on me if they did. And I think that's the role of the party chair, but especially the role of these other candidates. I know they don't all like each other. We have I forget how many people we're going to put forward on the ballot here in a few weeks. I know they don't all get along, but I expect them to pretend like they do, and to lead like they do, I guess, is probably the better way to say it, because this silliness of trying to out Republican each other doesn't serve us well. In terms, voters don't like that stuff. They want to just see how you're going to lead, and they want to believe that you're going to lead well.
I mean, that goes right in line. So we brought a group called the Leadership Institute in, and they did some trainings in Dallas County, Collin County, Tarrant County, Denton County, all over the place. And one of the things, they had a preeminent political consultant, been doing this for 40 years. And his first thing is on social media, and Kyle, you were at the training, he's like, I just ripped the phone out of my candidate's hands. You're not allowed on social media.
Yeah.
Right? Your job, if you're running for office, your job is to call two types of people. You're talking to voters and you're talking to donors, and that's it.
Right.
That's what you're doing all day. I don't want you tweeting. I don't care if you like the outcome of the Mavs game or the Rangers game or whatever. Just get off your phone. That's not what you're supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
So I love hearing you talk about they can, whatever you want to say on January 1st, 2027, have at it. But between now and then, talk to voters.
Well, and I want to just clarify too. I'm not asking anybody to be dishonest, but I think there's a way. I have a 5-year-old, and we're teaching him right now when he goes over to somebody's house, if they give him some food or a snack that he doesn't like, not to spit it out and throw it at him. We're teaching him to say, it wasn't my favorite. And I think that's kind of the lesson that I want to apply to just the messaging that we need to get back to in our party is just common decency. Be polite. But we can still advocate for the fact that the last administration was a disaster at the border. They were terrible for the economy. That they had very anti-family policies. We can say all of that stuff. That's okay. But we have to say it in a way that isn't lighting people's hair on fire.
Right.
Because in a battleground county, we've got to know that there are some people who thought maybe that last guy wasn't that bad.
Yeah.
And we got to talk to him and explain, he really wasn't, because he let hundreds of thousands of people across the southern border, and the consequences therefrom. That's how we do it, as opposed to, just rage tweeting or posting or whatever. that's not moving the needle right now in 2026.
And the thing that I was always taught was everything you say should be true, but everything that's true you don't have to say, right? So when you're talking about candidates not liking each other, maybe just don't say it.
Yeah.
If you don't have anything nice to say, don't say anything at all.
Yeah, same team, guys. Same
Right.
team.
So I want to talk a little bit about messaging, because you kind of hit on that earlier, and when you were just talking about, hey, we can still talk about the last guy didn't do a very good job. What is your read in Tarrant County on what are the issues that are moving voters right now?
Yeah, this isn't going to be much of a surprise. It's always going to be the economy. I think the culture right now to me feels very dynamic in a lot of ways and feels very stagnant in a lot of ways. And so there are a group of people in the culture who are doing very well economically. And then there's a lot of folks who are just, they feel like it's very stagnant and they can't get any sort of forward momentum. And I'm thinking about just a lot of people that I talk to who are trying to buy their first home or who are trying to save for their kids' college. They feel like things are so expensive. Our normal grocery order this week was $350. At my house with 2 adults and 2 little kids. That's a lot.
Same.
And we are not extravagant eaters, at all. My son ate chicken nuggets tonight, and so that's a real issue.
I find myself asking, how often do you need to go to Sam's Club?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. No, I get it.
And every time you check out and you just kind of do that double take of like, what happened here? And so we have to speak to that. We have to not just speak to it, we got to fix it. And we got to elect people who are going to fix it. Because if we don't, we're not going to lose elections. We're going to lose our country. And it's that pressing of an issue in the culture. And then where it's dynamic is all of this stuff where you see people protesting and you see just so much fury, largely driven by these other stagnant issues, but expressing itself in protest to ICE agents, or in protest to what the military may be doing around the world, or whatever Elon is doing. Where I live, we have a Tesla dealership, and there's always all these old white people that are out in front, protesting Elon Musk on the weekends, for about a couple hours, and they go back home and watch the football or
as long as the
basketball.
weather's good.
Yeah. Not in the rain, and so. But the country is expressing itself that way, and the counter protests to the protests, and now we're going to go and invade a church, and we're going to go disrupt their service, and then we're going to go and get online and rage against that. And so we have to speak to all of that stuff in a way that I think recognizes where people are coming from, recognize what they're seeing with their eyes. We don't need to gaslight anybody. People are getting shot at these protests now. There may be reasons for it,
right.
But we can't pretend that it's not happening. And so we've got to speak to all that, and then we've got to solve this economic issue that's affecting everybody.
As a trial attorney, I say this all the time. You have to own the bad facts. There are bad facts in any case that you're going to have. Just like in politics, there are going to be bad facts to anything that occur. So you look at, people getting shot at protests. I feel like we as a party have to get to the point where we can just acknowledge, like, yeah, that was bad. That was wrong. But that was one instance of a nationwide effort to try to, also in an area that is actively resisting and doing all sort of stuff like that. But like, man, I think just every once in a while as Republicans, just owning a bad fact, just eating the turd sandwich and then moving on with the rest would help so much.
Yeah, I mean, we can all say anytime somebody gets shot, it's bad. Now, do what the police tell you to do. Follow their instructions, follow their lawful orders. But anytime somebody gets shot, it's bad. And I think that's the way that we have to start talking to people in our culture who may not be as dialed in on these policy issues the way that we are and that are so important to us.
Yeah, I think the Republican Party finally got around to that's bad, but here are all the things. But by that time, the meat of the issue, the news cycle had already moved on. And that it was just a missed opportunity. And then the way that, we talked about message discipline, some of the messaging actually pissed off the base.
Right.
On what are you talking about? What do you mean I can't, now bring my gun? It was just, the messaging was really bad. And I think taking the phone out of someone's hand, everyone's so keyed up to like, I got to be the first one out there. I got to get that tweet out there. And it's like, you're not thinking when you're trying to move so quickly and mistakes happen, and that is something. And then speaking to the issue of like economics, as far as, of course, national, Trump can talk about the economy. As far as like a state representative or a House representative and local, when I was looking at the ads or kind of the messaging behind this gentleman that had won, I mean, he was kind of speaking to things that he can't even affect. I mean, it was like, I was like, okay, cool. But like, you have literally no bearing on any of that.
Sure. Right.
And I didn't really feel like, not from the candidate, but just from anybody really, there wasn't really a good pushback on like, you don't even have any influence over that.
Yeah.
You know, so what is, again, back to the like county party, what can people do to help you out as the county party chair to change the messaging or get the messaging louder?
Yeah, that's kind of, it gets back to what we're talking about. Like, we have to admit what we're seeing with our eyes, and we have to admit that we're seeing, an economy that for a lot of people is very stagnant. Now, how we affect that at different levels, is probably open for discussion on the policy side. But if we want to connect with the voter, we have to say, listen, we understand that you paid $350 for groceries this week, and you're going to have to do it again next week for the same stuff, maybe more. And here's what our national plan may be for that. And so I think what we saw in some of the messaging that you're talking about, which I think was a good strategy on their part, because it connected with voters in that sense. We can say at the county party, because we play at all levels. We'll have congressmen and senators on our ballot. In 2 years, we'll have a president on our ballot. And we can speak to those national issues and say to these statewide folks, you support this too. This is, your platform and your ticket as well. There are things that the state can do and things that it can't. But I think we still have to be honest with what we're seeing and talk about that we do have solutions to that.
So a question that I've got as far as getting the message out there, at least in our world, podcast world, younger people, social media is so prevalent with that, right? I mean, we talk about taking the phones out of people's hands. From a county party, how important is social media to getting messaging and all that sort of stuff out there, as opposed to like earlier you were talking about, well, we sent out 100,000 emails and 100,000 text messages. Are those still the levers that have most voter touches, or how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question, and probably one even beyond my expertise. I think every way you can get an eyeball is important. I mean, if that's a billboard, I think that's important. So social media, very important, because that's where everybody is now. You got to be careful that we're not trying to, win the social media primary, in that sense. But it's a place that people are looking for messaging, and that's a place where we should be. It's a place where we should be talking about this stuff. But everything that we see is that mail still works. I mean, I have a stack of flyers. We have the House district that I live in has a contentious primary, and I'm keeping every one of their mailers. I get about 3 or 4 a day. I keep them in my garage because at the end of it, it's going to be about that tall. But I know who's running in it, and I know what their positions are, and so that still works. I joked about billboards. Text messages still work. I mean, not everybody's as smart as you to filter it out, and so that stuff is still coming through. I think we're in this a little bit of transition with media right now, where we'll figure out in the next 10 years what's more effective in this battle between mail or billboards or social media or whatever. It's not newspapers, right? We know that. But I think it is going to be a lot of internet ads. It is going to, and the stuff that they can do with the micro targeting now, so impressive. And I think we'll see more of that going forward, where, we not only know that you live in this House district, we know that you live in this neighborhood and that your neighbor is more likely to vote for my opponent. And so we're going to message you specifically that way. I mean, they're doing that stuff right now. And we'll just see more and more of it.
Yeah, because the reason I wanted to ask is, I saw a recent reel on social media that was fairly critical of the Tarrant GOP's Instagram page specifically. There's just not a lot of activity. There's not a lot of posts. I think when we looked at it before this, it was like the Labor Day post was still on the first page. So that's where,
hopefully it was Labor Day 25.
I believe it was. But that's where I, was just wanting to ask, like, how you do use social media, because I think a lot of people will look at a social media profile or account and count the posts and see how much is being used, as opposed to, well, yeah, no, we use it, but we're doing digital ads or we're doing all this other sort of stuff. Like, have y'all looked at what a robust social media campaign looks like going into November?
Yeah, and that's where
not to give the secrets away.
No. I mean, I think there is no secret there. I think the more active you are on social media, to your point, I think the more robust your presence appears. I think that just the more vibrant your cause appears. And so that's one of the things that I am looking at now that I'm here and kind of, with some of this, as I'm triaging the things, some of those major things behind me is we've got to, you've seen more out of our Facebook lately. You'll see more out of our Instagram. I'll confess just to being really weak at social media personally. I had to make a Chairman Tim Davis page, which was just torture for me to have to figure out how to do all the Facebook stuff and a posting schedule and everything.
I made a mistake this weekend of posting the wrong picture of my girlfriend.
Oh, you better not.
She was very not happy. Why is that the one that you used? Well, that was the one that popped up first. That's not the one I wanted you to post. So knock that out either.
But it's where people are,
yeah.
And so like we've got to do that, and there's an expectation now at least with one of those channels, whether it's Facebook or Instagram or X, that you have a real active presence as a way to get the message out, and just to let people know like what's going on. Even our own people, will look there for what's the calendar got coming up in the next few weeks, and we've got to do that stuff.
Well, we appreciate. Kyle, do you have anything?
No,
on that front. You are more of the social media savvy of the two of us.
Yeah, I mean the biggest thing is, and you have said it and we have said it, but it's just like the I'm honestly I'm just jealous of the Democrats and how quickly it's like big family fight. Guests are coming over. Everyone loves it. Big hugs.
Right.
And I'm just it's just never ending. It seems like on the Republican end of the spectrum here of constant infighting. I think we, to some degree, hate each other, and we just dislike the Democrats. Like we literally hate each other sometimes. And I hope that we put that behind us. I do have a question. I mean, in some ways, is this kind of a blessing in disguise? This loss. I mean, she lost, right? I can't vote on anything. There's really not. I mean, really, it's just. I mean, what's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean. That's the silver lining to it. Is it kind of is a wake up call for us not to take any election, not to take any vote or voter for granted. And so we definitely learned that lesson coming out of a few weeks ago. It was difficult to extrapolate from there. In terms of what data can we use? Because that's what we're really all about, is trying to figure out where did our vote come from, who turned out. Specials, to your point earlier, are difficult to read that data. Some of it's there, and we know. I think there was. I was going to say significant. That's kind of a math word. There was a crossover vote. I mean, there were some Republicans who voted for that guy, and I want to know why. And so I got to find those folks and talk to them and see where we missed our messaging. And then there was an independent vote, and that's important in battleground states and battleground counties. And we're going to spend a lot of time talking to those people. And so that would be the other kind of silver lining to it, is waking us up to realize there's more, independents out there. I have this theory. I don't know if you all would agree. I don't think anybody's truly an independent. I think they're just people who don't vote in primaries. So everybody kind of at least falls one way or the other on the line. But we got to talk to those people because we want their votes and they're important to us. The president turns out a voter that doesn't always turn out if he's not on the ballot. And that's the other thing, too, that was just a realization for us of it was a plus 17 district for him 2 years ago, and then it was negative 15 for us a few Saturdays ago. I don't know that that's so much of a swing in the district as it is a swing in who came out.
Yeah, the latter, for sure. Yeah.
He motivates a lot of people that we're just not used to seeing all the time. I want to get him back in November, and I got to figure out how.
Yeah. The Republican Party is a big tent party, but sometimes the tent doesn't get filled up.
Well, and this has always been my thing, and I've seen polls to effect of this, is that if we had more of a proportionate representation like they have in Europe, there would probably be 6 or 7 parties in the U.S.
Right.
Because that's how voters clump up on issues.
Yeah.
So when it comes to the tent, the size of the tent, the independents, you're going to have some clumps that are always going to be under the Republican or the Democrat tent. But then there's some clumps in the middle, and these are some of the people you talked about that President Trump brought to the Republican Party. There's some of those clumps in the middle that they could go both ways. They could, depending upon the messaging of the parties, depending upon the issues that are most important at the time, they could swing from one tent to the other. And I think that's how I sort of look at independents.
Yeah.
Not like they're a separate set of voters, but just that they're people that their alliances can shift based upon what their issues are. I mean, like, you look at a lot of the populism that Trump brought into the Republican Party. I remember when I was in college and studying economics, the idea of a Republican president being in favor of tariffs and a Republican president, wanting to limit free trade was just, I mean, that was sacrilege, right? I mean, the Republican Party was the free trade party. That's what they did. But again, you've got Trump that has a different perspective on that.
Sometimes change is good.
When you're trying to figure out that sort of messaging, or what are things you can pull on? I mean, I guess for the general voters, people think about things like polls. And what information, like how do you go about figuring that sort of stuff out?
Yeah, I think the first thing you got to do is take a step back and figure out why do people switch, from tent to tent. And I think it's what we've said. It's because somebody is speaking well to what they're seeing with their eyes, and there's one party over another is speaking better to those issues. And so with that being the case, we have to figure out how to talk better. But we got to figure out what those issues are. And so there's a lot of smart consultants, as you all have talked about, who know ways to test that. And we're going to do some of that in Tarrant County. We have to, because I don't want to be so ignorant as to think the issues that matter to me are what matters to everybody. That's so dumb, because the stuff that matters to me is, can I find a babysitter? Like, can I?
Yeah.
Do you guys know anyone?
I do.
Because that's like front of mind for me right now. But it's not front of mind for somebody whose kids are already in college. And that's a silly example, but that's what I'm talking about. Is there is a segment of issues that are going to speak to all of us, or the bulk of us, and I want our party to find out what those are and to have the best voice in that conversation. We will, if we're just smart about it and we're disciplined about it.
I mean, that's great to hear. I mean, the whole concept of we're going to figure out what matters to voters and try to do that. We had a conversation last year around the Republican Party legislative priorities and just compared those to what polling says are the most important issues to voters, and how disassociated that is. And of course, that makes some sense, right? It's a party, you're advocating, you're trying to create a little bit of the landscape going into a legislative session. But it's great to hear from a local level, like we're going to figure out what matters to people in Tarrant County, and we're going to message and try to solve those problems.
Yeah, I mean, if you've seen our platform that comes out of our conventions every 2 years, every issue is in there. I mean, every issue is in
Twice.
there. Yeah, and I'm not being critical of that.
Yeah.
What I'm saying is we're speaking to these issues. We need to figure out how to package that message and market it. I don't want to change the message at all, but I want to explain it to my neighbor in a way that they're like, that's right. I recognize that's a solution. I see myself in that solution, and I want to support that solution. We win that voter every time.
Right.
Yeah.
But I mean it in the sense of, if you're telling me your priority that you're going to hold everybody accountable to is taxpayer-funded lobbying,
which is an important issue. It's important.
I know, we got to keep them.
No.
I will continue to be the Republican that dies on that hill. The other part of it, the other side of it, though, is that, affordability is what matters right now. So if you're a candidate and you're out on the trail and you're talking about end of taxpayer-funded lobbying, or even you're talking about strengthening Second Amendment rights in the state of Texas, okay, I think all of us at the table can agree on strong Second Amendment, but what's the threat to that right now? Is that on top of a voter's mind, as opposed to, well, no, what's actually important to me right now is, how do you keep the streets safe here in Dallas?
Yeah.
And how do you make sure that the price of a house goes down or stays
is my
stagnant?
small business going to survive?
Right, exactly.
Am I going to be able to afford my kids' college? All of those things are front of mind for a lot of people, because we're just seeing that part of what was just normal life for us a few years ago. It feels like it's getting out of control, and it feels like chaos has been injected into those normal everyday things. So that's big times of crisis or big times of opportunity, and that's where our party has to speak to those. And if we speak well, we'll win that opportunity. The other side can't speak to that. They're the cause of the chaos,
right.
And that's their playbook. They create chaos and then blame Republicans for the solution. They just do it every cycle.
Alinsky would be proud.
That's right. And so what we have done is we've just retreated from the discussion. And the local party, to kind of get back to the whole point, I think, of what you guys want to talk about is I think we're best positioned to speak into that, because we know these people. We live next to them. We go to school with them. We work with them. We go to church with them. And we cannot retreat from that conversation. We can't let them shame us into being embarrassed of what we stand for, because our ideas are right and our ideas will prevail when we express them in a way that makes sense to our friends and neighbors.
Well, for the voters or the citizens in Tarrant County that have heard you, They want to come out, they want to help, right? They're motivated by what happened in SD9. How can they plug in? Where do they need to go? What can they do to be a help to the local party?
Yeah, Tarrant, GOP.org is our website. We have a very robust calendar. Pick an event. Go to a club. We have an EC meeting in a few weeks in March. We'd love to have guests at an executive committee meeting. So that's me and all the precinct chairs getting together. And then truly find a campaign. That's the most important thing somebody can do. Find a candidate that you can really get behind and really get behind them. Go door knock for them. Go phone bank for them. In my office, we had in my energy office, we had, I think, 3 different phone banks at various points in the run up to Saturday. And this sounds so silly, but they're fun. Right? They're fun. We get our friends in there, and most of the time we have to remind ourselves that we're there to do a thing and not just goof off and have fun. And we order pizza. It's just it's silly. Do that kind of stuff and find the way that you enjoy it. And again, we'd love to have you involved with the party anytime.
Well, Tim, I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you.
The Honorable Chairman Tim Davis. I appreciate you coming on, joining us. Do you have any Kyle's closing thoughts?
I don't. Well, yeah, I do actually. You need to show up and vote. That's what you need to do. That is your responsibility as a citizen to show up and vote, and then also talk to your candidates. Like, hey, these are the things that matter to me and my neighbors.
Yep.
It's also your responsibility to like the video, share the video, subscribe to the channel. Follow A Better Texas, bettertx.com to find out the events that we have going on. Also, we've got training that's coming up. There's actually training happening tonight. We have a training for precinct chairs drafting resolutions next Saturday, the 21st, at the Dallas County Republican Party headquarters. We're doing that training again in Collin County at their headquarters on the 28th. Go out there, get active. If you're mad, if you're upset, do something with it. But as always, thank you for joining us, and we'll see you next time.